sample sales data Excel file. And I'm going to open that up. And I asked you to analyze two nominal fields. And there are many nominal fields, but the one I asked you to do was column M, which is region. Okay, so if you notice, what region is a word, right? It's not a number. It is Central West, okay, which is fine. I can still use COUNTIF. So what the heck, let's use COUNTIF. But first, let me see, my data goes from, let's look, column M starts in M2, control N, down to 9,427. So let's go over here and let's put region. And I'm going to type in, let's see, Central, East, oops, West. What are the other regions? Am I missing any? Is that all 4 regions? Okay, so South. So let's do a frequency. And let me make this bigger so you guys can see. And we're going to do equal COUNTIF. And I want M2 to M9000. What was that number? 427, is that right? 427, comma. And I want it to count the central, so I'm going to say AB2. Okay, and hit enter. Now, some of you had this exact equation, but it was having a 0, and you're like, I'm doing everything wrong, Doctor. I'm doing everything right, Dr. Miko. Why is it not finding it? Well, let me just put a space right after central in this region, and you'll see now what happens is it doesn't find any of them, right? Because it's trying to look for central with a space, and all the centrals in the data have no spaces after the L. Does that make sense? So sometimes when you see something like that, you know, like the way I fixed the students who brought that to me is I said, well, let's see, you know, there's something it's not finding it, and it should. So we just went over here and we copied like one of the entries for central over, you know, and it matched up, right? It matched up exactly. There is a function of Excel, if you ever want to say, like, I want to get rid of leading spaces, okay, or trailing or leading spaces, there's a function in Excel that does that called trim. And it just basically trims off any leading or trailing spaces so that you're sure of that. Does that make sense? So anyways, I'm going to copy this down, so I'm going to F4 that guy. I'm going to drag that down. Might as well put a total here to go along with it. Auto sum it. It looks like I have my 9,426 entries. I want relative frequency as well. So let's put in here equal AC2 divided by AC7, and I always want to make the AC7 absolute. So I'm going to put my F4 on that, drag that down, auto sum. Okay, this is all a percentage. I might as well center it while I'm here. So now we know, we could go to our boss. She told me to analyze this data. I'd pretty this up probably, but I can say that, it's a pretty even distribution, our sales across the region. If there's one that we're kicking butt in more than the others, it's the central region. That's where, 31%, almost a third of our sales are coming from, right? So that's one way to do it, okay? That's one way to do it. How I would probably do this, and then, we can make the chart so I can, now if I want to do a pie chart or a bar chart, let's make a bar chart first. Here's my bar chart. Remember, we've been picking the 9th one because it gives us the title. I've been picking this black background. I've been picking using data labels, and I like, that's where I like to see them, but they can be anywhere. But anyways, we have now a bar chart. We can do a pie chart just as easily. Yes, that makes sense. So some of you guys did it that way, yes? Yes. Did anyone else use another method? Eric? Okay, so in truth, what I would probably do in this case is I would use the pivot table, but there was a component that I didn't show you what to do. Okay, so Why don't we all fire this up? So let's do this together because this is kind of new, kind of review, but it's kind of new. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is go to this data, and we're going to highlight all of our data. So I'm going to click on A and drag over, and I'm going to go the whole way to column. What is it? I don't want the table I just created, but column Z, A to Z. That makes sense, right? So I'm going to highlight A to Z. So the top row, A to Z. You guys with me? Okay. Now I'm going to go to insert, and we're going to insert our pivot table, and it says, looks like you want A to Z. Yeah, I do. And I wanted a new worksheet. There it is. Okay. So what it does now is we have all those fields, all those fields that are in that top row are accessible to us. Sydney, did you have a little issue?
Yeah, how do you highlight all of
Click A, like the top of the column, and then drag over, and you'll see it'll shade as you go. You got it? Okay. So what's kind of nice is I have access to all these fields, and I can play around with them accordingly. And what's really cool is let's take the one we were concerned with is region. So let's take region, and we'll drag it down the rows, and it says, hey, there's central, east, south, west, the same 4 that we found ourselves. And I'm going to take region and drag it to the values, and just like that, I have a frequency distribution. Now, you may say, well, Dr. Miko, you wanted more analysis, and you wanted, for example, a bar chart or a pie chart. Well, I didn't show you this component yet, but what we can do, okay, is we can actually, under Analyze, we can tie a pivot chart to this pivot table. So let's just click on Pivot Chart. Okay, while I'm on the pivot table that I just built, let's click on Pivot Chart. Now, and let's pick this column chart, the clustered column. Now, these two things are tied together, right? These are like, if I make a change over here, it's going to change over here accordingly. These are, a pivot chart and a pivot table are tied together. They're one's predicated off the other. And you might look at this and say, well, that doesn't look like how I want it to look, Dr. Miko. Well, you'll see that we have a lot of the same tools that we had in the charting mechanism we have here. For example, I have the quick layout. I can go to the 9th one if I like. I'll use a gray background for this one. I can change the title as I see fit here. If you notice, we have these little things which are actually, filters. So I could say, click on this region button and say I don't want, and I really don't want blank. So I'm going to get rid of blank. I just filtered that out. And the reason it's called pivot, is because there's action involved. You can pivot, you can change, all right? You pivot direction, you can change things as we go. And then I said, well, I'm going to print this out, and I don't really like those field buttons. You know what I'm saying? Like the count of region and the region. So I can get rid of them by going under Analyze, Field List, and field buttons. Those are field buttons, not field list. I'm sorry. And get rid of the field buttons that way. And I'd have to pretty that up. I'd have to change the title. I'd have to do all those things. But boom, I have a bar chart, okay, and it's tied to that pivot chart. Now, some of you said, well, Dr. Miko, you wanted the relative frequency, and I said, yeah, I did. So if I wanted relative frequency, I could drag region under there. But you notice what kind of happens is, so I'm going to change that value field settings. I'm going to change that to show values as percentage of grand total. And what happens is we are actually graphing two things, which we really don't want to graph that, but these two things are shown together. So we kind of are stuck there, right? So that's why I didn't graph count of region at the beginning of this. Okay, so because these two things are tied together. I didn't show you this yet, but I could go to, all right, let me go. Okay. Now, a couple other things I want to show you with a pivot table. We'll talk about this more in chapter 3, actually. But what's great about a pivot table now is, let's say I'm in charge of the West region, right? And I get all this data, and I do this analysis, but I'm really concerned about my own stuff because that's where I get my commission, right? So what I can do is, if I go to the count, which is these 2,284 cells, if I double click on that, go ahead, double click on that. Okay, you'll see it builds us a new worksheet. And that new worksheet is only those 2,284 items. So I kind of have drilled down. Does that make sense? Yes, I've drilled down in that region, which is kind of cool. Now I can like analyze those separately if I wanted to. What's even more cool, okay, is, you know, maybe I told you to pick a second type of nominal data. Well, I can take like this category and I can drag that. I'm going to get rid of this one. That just uglies it up. But I can get rid of that category. I mean, that second one, I can put category on the columns. And now we have, hey, in the central region, I sold 158 appliances. I sold 332 binders. I sold 69 bookcases and 158 chairs. So now I have another level, right? So I'm kind of slicing and dicing this data, if you will. And we'll do more of this in chapter 3. But let's say I'm concerned about those 69 bookcases that we sold in the central region. What's kind of great is I can double click on that 69 and boom, there's those 69 sales items in another worksheet that I can analyze separately if I like. Yes? So think about it. You're going to be presented with tens of thousands of records. You know, I kid you not. Your boss is going to say to you, "Hey, we need this analyzed," and she's not really going to tell you what to do. And you've got to figure out, you know, what is the story this data tells, and you got to try to tell that story as best you can. The other thing we can do, I'm going to take like, I don't know, customer segment. Let's take customer segment and drag it to filters. And now you'll see I can say I only want to see maybe consumer items. So I checked select multiple items. I unchecked all, and I just checked consumer. Now this table is only shows me by region, by category, consumer sales. Okay, so you see how we can take all of this data and drill down to the thing that interests us the most. Make sense? We'll come back to this because there's a lot you can do with pivot tables, and I kind of went through it fast because we're not really there yet, but I got kind of excited to show you. So. Questions on that? You guys then were able to do the homework. You feel comfortable making bar charts and pie charts and a couple different ways if needed, yes? Okay, so a couple things then. We will probably have our first like in-class Excel exam quiz on Thursday of next week, okay? So I'll give you like a little sample exam on Tuesday, but it'll be in class where I'll give you a data set and I will tell you what I want to analyze, and you'll analyze it and upload it to Blackboard, and I'll grade it later, right? So it's not going to take the whole class session. I'll probably give you like a half hour of class to do that analysis, but I want to see that you can do it, okay? Does that make sense? So that's going to be a week from today, whatever that date is, okay? Questions? All right. Then let us move forward. I'm going to skip for now the section on histograms. We're going to come back to it, but we're going to skip that momentarily. And we're going to cover a couple other sections today, as much as we can. I'm going to try to get as much as we can done in chapter 2 today. So we talked about 3 types of data. We talked about interval, numerical data, ordinal, rank data, and nominal, just categorical data. Well, we can also describe data by how we get it. You know, like what's the time frame we receive the data? You know, JR, if I ask you your mood today, what's your mood on a scale of 1 to 10, JR? 9. I like that. Okay, I'll probably about a 9 myself. Okay. That is what we call cross, and I like, Roger, what's your mood today? 1 to 10, 1 to 10, make it American. 6, okay, and Sydney? Okay, so if I ask all of you your moods today, right, and I took that data and analyzed it, that's cross-sectional data. Why? Because it's one point in time. If you think about the time continuum, you know, like the start of, you know, anything to the end of anything, you know, cross-section of that time continuum, at point in time on September 1st at 9:47 p.m., this was the average mood of the class of Dr. Nico's STAT301 class. That's cross-sectional data. But a lot of times, we want to see what data does over time. That's called time series data. So if every day, this would be kind of obtrusive, but every day you came through that door and I asked you what your mood was, and I tracked that throughout the semester, that is an example of time series data, right? That's showing data over time. Does that make sense? Now, how do we demonstrate? Time series data is really important in the business world because we use it to do like forecasting. We look for trends and, like, you know, how are our sales doing? How is, you know, Roger's sales performance doing? You know, is Eric trending up? Is his arrow pointing up? Have you ever heard your coach say that? Is your arrow pointing up or down? You know, that's important, right? So how do we do that? How do we graphically show trends in time series data? It says up here. It does say that. We do something called a line chart, okay? A line chart, you guys have seen these before, is just a chart where always on the x-axis is time, and always on the y-axis is the value that we're measuring. If it's the price of gasoline, if it's JR's mood, if it's the stock price of M&T Bank, okay? So in the business world, line charts are very, very common. They're a very common thing. So, you know, if we look, you know, if you're in finance, of course you use these. If we go out to, I don't know, Google Finance, you know, and I look at the company I used to work for. So if I look at, I don't know, MTB, I click search for that's M&T Bank. You know, comes up with a line chart, right? This is the stock's performance over time. Right now, it looks like we have it looks like it's by monthly, but I could also change this to say I want to see it by what it do today. Well, I don't think the markets are open now. 5 days, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months since its inception. Okay, we can change that time frame. And if you notice, if we go back to, I don't know, 6 months, you know, it has a lot of times line charts have special designations like, hey, they issued a dividend here. So line charts are very, very useful in the business world. Okay, I don't want to go much further than that except to show you how to create one. So what we're going to do is in your book, there's an example where we recorded the monthly average retail price of gasoline since 1976. And we recorded that data into a file. So let's bring up that file and take a look at that time series data. So I'm going to go to Blackboard. I am going to go to Book Excel files. I'm going to go to Course Text Excel files by chapter. I'm going to go to Chapter 2. And I'm going to go to XM02-03. Okay, I don't know if you noticed, but first thing I did was upconvert it. Remember how we upconvert it? So upconvert it to Excel 2016. So what we have here is we have the price per gallon in cents, United States cents, since January 1976. The time frame we're looking at is monthly, right? So monthly is January, February, March. Okay, so one of the things that students often screw up here is they select everything, do insert, don't do this, and they do line chart, and I get 3 lines because it assumes, hey, this is data, it assumes this is data, and assumes this is data. They're not all data, right? Some of them are labels. So the only data item I have here, and when I say data item, I mean value item, is column C. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to highlight column C, go to insert, and let's pick a line chart under chart grouping, line chart. And let's just do the plain one, the first one, the 2-dimensional one. Once again, you know, we start with a graph that is a D graph, right? It's probably an F graph, actually. A lot of problems, a lot of issues with this graph. Obviously, there are some things like, for example, you know, we don't know a lot of things about this, right? So I would probably, let's look for a quick layout that helps me. Let's see. I'll go with, no, I don't like that one. Let's go with that one, okay? So that's, which one did I choose? It was the first one, I think it was, okay? So I would need to give this a better title. I would say, let's say the price, the monthly price of gas in the USA. And on the y-axis, give me the title for the y-axis. Give me the title. And this is really important because when you hand in your first assignment, I'm going to be picky, and you might be angry when you get a 4 out of 5 out of 5, but you have to be very, very specific when you denote like the axis label. So what would you label this axis? Eric, what would you label this y-axis? Give me, come on, Eric, help me out here. What would you label, Sophia? Okay, very good. I like, you said price per gallon, I like that. And then, if you just say price per gallon, you know, that's probably a 4.5 out of 5, right? And the reason, and she added that, she said, in cents, and I would say, I would even go a little further, in USD, which stands for US dollars, right? Because other currency has cents. You know, that's a little crazy, I know, and I probably wouldn't do that if it was a domestic kind of, but, you know, always think about, okay, what's the currency, right? It's important, we're in global society, and what's the measure that we're looking at here? Now, we only have one line, so that legend is superfluous, we don't need it. Tell me a way I can get rid of it. Give me a way I can get rid of that legend. One way I can get rid of that legend. Let's do that. That's probably the quickest. Click on it, delete, it's gone. Still, this graph is probably a 3.5 out of 5. Right? It's probably a C minus. What's wrong with this graph? Rachel? Okay, so by default, what Excel does is it sequentially numbers this. It says, hey, you didn't really tell me about any label, so this is data point 1, 15, but I don't know what the hell that is, right? So I need to tell Excel about those things. So if we go to select data, okay, this is an interface we haven't used yet because we've just been telling it, we've been highlighting the data and assuming Excel will figure that out. This is where we have the series of data. So right now, we have one series we're graphing. That's column C, right? Price per gallon. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But one thing I definitely want to change, where do you think I want to change here? What's the issue that I want to change? It shows us 1, 2, 3, 4. The horizontal category axis labels. So I'm going to click on edit there, and I'm going to give it a better label than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Where is the label range I want to give it? And I can only give it one column. I can't give it both columns. I only give it one column. Which column should I put on the horizontal category axis labels? What do you think? Yeah. I would say column A. Why, Leah? If I put in column B, all it's going to say is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to count to 12 many, many times, right? A, the year, is more appropriate. So I'm going to say, well, the range I'm going to look at, I'm going to click on that little spreadsheet, and then I'm going to highlight A2 the whole way down to A4445. I'm going to click the little, looks like a closing a window shade. I close the window shade. I click OK. And you see it put those in there, 1990, 76, 76, 76. If I click OK now, okay, you'll see, that my year is down there. So I can definitely see a trend. Now this is really, so this is a 4.5 out of 5. You're like saying, well, Dr. that's ridiculous, that was perfect. What issue do you see? It's a minor issue, but it is still problematic. If we look at the Y or the X-axis labels. Roger, you want to read those to me? Read the X-axis labels to me, starting with 1976. Oh, there's an issue there. What happened? What the hell is 1982, right? So it looks like you're hiding something, yes? Doesn't it look like you're hiding something? Well, here's why. It depends on some, I see Sophia has like a confused look on her face. So yours might not look exactly like mine. So if I make this bigger, you'll see 82 comes back. And what Excel does, and if I make it smaller, heck, now it's going like every 3 years. So what's nice about Excel is your graph might not have been the same as mine, but it says, hey, as big as it is, I'm going to try to pick throwing down a label when I think it's appropriate based on the size of your graph, right? And 9 times out of 10, Excel knows best. But sometimes it doesn't look quite right. So I need to understand how I can change that myself. So I'm going to right-click on that x-axis. I'm going to go to Format Axis. And under Axis Options, there's a little twisty that you can check that says Labels. That'll expand the labels. Okay. And if you see here, it says, hey, what's the interval between labels? Like, how many data points do we want to go before we throw down a label? And right now it says automatic. That means, hey, I'll take care of it for you. That's Excel saying, I'll take care of that for you. But I'm going to specify when I want it to throw down a label. Help me with that. Tony, what would you put in there? Okay. Yeah, so you're going to say 1. So what that's going to do, Tony, is it's going to throw down a label for every data point. So what's that going to look like? Like that, right? So 1's no good. I like 12, because what's 12 do, Tony? Puts it down 1 every year, right? But it still looks like it's a little too crowded. So what if I wanted 1 for every 2 years? I like that. I don't like that. Well, let's do this. That should make it a little bigger. That's better. Okay, so now it's throwing down 1 for every 2 years, which is better. Now, some other things I might want to change. Let's right-click on that axis again, go to Format Axis. I know down here you saw labels, and we changed that as we saw fit, 24. Tick marks. Okay, tick marks are the thing on the label. It has an interval between tick marks. We can say the major type we can specify is I don't know, inside. We can say we want a tick mark every 12 units. Okay, and we hit Enter here. Click off of it, and now you'll see. I know it's hard to see. But now we can see. Like here's 2008 and here's 2010. That tick mark, which is very precise, that's 2009. You know what I'm saying? So you can specify all those things. Does this make sense? All right. Let's do something else. let's pretend like we also had, say that was US price of, do we have any international students here? Gabrielle, you're from, what's the price of gas in Spain like? More expensive here or less expensive?
It's more expensive in Spain.
In Spain, like how much, by a factor of how much?
I don't know because we don't use gas.
You don't use gas?
No, we don't use like they measure, like we use like liters.
Oh, okay, you're not using gallons, all right. But it's more expensive.
Yeah.
Let's say it's 50% more expensive, okay? So I'm gonna say in D, I'm gonna say, I don't know, gas price in Spain. And I'm gonna have to make up data here because, maybe, but let's pretend like we got real data. And based on Gabriella's comment, I'm just gonna take whatever the price was in the United States, which is in C2, and I'm gonna multiply that. So multiply in Excel is an asterisk by 1.5. You guys with me? So all I'm doing is making up data. So all I did was I built a new column, and I'm going to say whatever the hell's in C2, just multiply it by a factor of 1.5. It puts a premium, a Spanish premium on it. Hit enter. And then I want that data, I'm going to drag that down and fill out the whole column. Okay, so I just want data there. I don't care if it's right. I'm just, fabricating data is all I'm doing at this point. Is the data wrong? There you go. They look better? Yeah. Well, you did exactly what I told you not to do. So, leave it. Leave the whole thing. All right. I like column C. Click on C. The C. There you go. You highlighted everything here, and that's why you got like three lines. You only have one value. So you guys have two columns of data. So what also useful about line charts is we can see data over time, but we can see what it does in comparison to other data over time, right? By doing multiple line charts. You know what I'm saying? So maybe we have, I don't know, the GPAs of all of our sports teams from, 2010 to 2016, like 3 O's them. So we have like, one line could be, this could be women's golf. And this one line could be, this could be men's golf, whatever it might be. So we can see what they do over time, but then we can also see how they interact with one another. Does that make sense on a line chart? So let's create a line for the Spanish gas price. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our graph so that we get our chart tools back. I'm going to go to Design. I'm going to go to Select Data. And it might screw up some things because it probably is going to screw up some things, but we can always fix it. Over here in the series, see this series data? We only have one series now. Okay, we have this price per gallon cents. This is US price. Let's click Add, because we're adding another series of data to the graph. Click Add. And what do you think the series name is? Give me the cell that contains the series name. D1. So I hit the little spreadsheet, click on D1, D1 goes in there. Where are the series values? Well, the series values, I'm going to click that little spreadsheet. I'm going to highlight D2 the whole way down to D445. Oh, yeah, D445. I went too far. D2 to D445. Click OK. Yeah, it always does that when it gets rid of your horizontal axis category labels. So I'm going to have to tell them about that again, which is a pain. Okay, so now I'm graphing two series of data at once, right? So I can see the blue is the US price of gas and the red is the Spanish price of gas. What do I need though now that I have two series of data? What do I need that I didn't have earlier? What do I need that I got rid of? Is that what you say? I need the legend back, right? So let's get the legend back. I click on the plus, and I go to legend, and I'm going to put the legend. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to put it on. I don't know. I'm going to put it on the top. There we go. Mark. Go to add. Okay, you're going to add a series. You only have one, so you need to add them both, okay? So as I look around the room, there are different levels of being able to do this. So what I would like to do is I'm going to have you guys do one right now, and I'll come around and help those that need help. Let's pick a homework problem. I want you to do number 20 on page 33. So do number 20 on page 33. It has imports and exports from our good friends in Canada. So I want you to end up with two lines, okay? Two lines. You can do them both at once if you like. You can highlight them and add that at once, all right? So what's that? 20. Number 2, 20. All right, let's see. So you're adding this. So click on that little spreadsheet that says series name. Okay, now click on D1 to name the series that you added. Good. See that drop down, that close window. Now click the spreadsheet. Now you need to tell about the data, which will be D2, start in D2. Drag the whole way down. It's at 445. That would be, remember when you look at your select data. Remember where you put it at. Remember, this is where you told about the name exists, right? So you said C1, so if you change what's the C1, it's going to change there. You know what I mean? Yep, that's right. Quarterback. Is that okay? Put the line. What line down? Better? That's a start, right? That's a start. All right, so go to select data. So you want to change that horizontal axis. Here is A2, so put the whole spreadsheet. A2 way down. That's how you get labels. Here we go. Okay. Alright. So years ago, 76. Right click on your ears. Format down to labels. It's automatically, now let's go oh, okay. It's putting down a label every 20 data points, right? But your data is in groups of 12 because it's months. So you always want that to be a multiple of 12. So, if you do one every 3 years, it's 36, every 4 years, 48, 28. This is the whole thing because you're getting year and date. So you look at label rate, you want A2. So we're not doing that too much. You don't want the label. You actually have to label. You got stuff. And then the other thing, a little chart. I think you did the same thing when you had a series. The first one, series name, should be one cell in the series name. Gas price in Spain. And then the series value should start with D2. I think you were putting on D. You give it a whole column that doesn't know what to do with it. Right? Video editing. They say that. Yep. You got a theory? Yep. So you're doing. Yep. That's, well, Mike. That'll work when you're doing like a bar chart. It's not adjacent data. It should have worked there too. I don't know why it didn't. Go to select data. Click on analyze, select data, see what horizontal axis. Make that right. Again, go to the animal, your chart position. Horizontal category axis. And like you're starting in A2, don't start at A1. So click on that. Click on that. Yes. Now click on D1 only. D1. Drop down. And highlight D2, not the whole column. Start D2. Yep. What's this? You guys good? No? Select data.
You got up there. Yeah, every time I click upconvert, it's.
Yeah.
So this time, the last two times we tried to do it, it's going to like save the file.
Yeah, just resave it.
Okay, resave it.
It's like saving it as a new version.
Okay. For up to the initial line chart.
Yeah.
I don't remember. If I remember when they're just highlighting all these. That's good. I don't know if there's an easier way.
Pretty damn easy. What do you want it to go in your mind?
Yeah, if there was more stuff though, it'd be a little more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta click on edit right there. Now highlight. Start on A1. Start A2. Start on A2. Hold it down. All right, so that was good because I saw some common things that were being done wrong, right? So now I'm gonna do this one what we're doing for in the book, and I'll make sure I point out those things that people were doing wrong. So let's go to book Excel files, and we're going to go to chapter 2, and let's go to XR02-20. And the first thing is people were not up converting, and I said, why did you not up convert? Oops, you guys can't see this. People were saying they weren't up converted. I said, why aren't you up converting? He said, it doesn't work for me. What you do when it up converts is it actually saves the file as a different version. So it may give you a dialog that says, do you want to save it? Click yes, we want to resave it. So I'm going to click up convert. It says, converts the workbook to the current format. Okay. It says, do you want to close and reopen the workbook now? Yes. It may even say like it wants to resave it. Save it. Okay. And now you have all the features and functionality. Okay. First question, where's my data at here, Mark? Where's the data I want to graph in a line chart? What? Yeah, and it is in C1 the whole way down to C337, right? That's my data. This is not data, this is labels. Let's do data. I'm going to click insert. Okay, I'm going to say line chart. And there's my data, okay? Now, I want you guys to note something, right? So I highlighted that data and it graphed it accordingly. But if I wanted to add it in manually, which we do with select data, let's look at like US exports to Canada. What some people were doing is it says series name and they were throwing in all column C. And I thought, you know, you go by one name, not many names, unless you're like running from a lot. So you only want to put one cell name in there, not all of column C, just one cell name. So it's pointing to C1. That's where the name is. The data itself, well, this is a label. This isn't data. So some people were clicking on column C and giving it all the data. And trying to graph a label as a data. It's like, I can't do that. So this has to start in C2, right? Because a label is not data. Does that make sense? So a lot of times people were trying to shortcut it and just click on C. And Excel couldn't understand what you were trying to do, okay? So anyways, where is my chart? Did I lose it? There it is. So this chart, not a great chart at this point. I'm going to put a title on it. I would put a title on it that's nice, of course. One thing glaringly wrong with this is what? Yeah, so select data is where we do the labeling, where we choose our data, where we add our series. So once again, I'm going to select data, and where we want to change the horizontal axis labels is in the area that says horizontal axis labels. We click edit, and the label range, A1 is not a label, it's a label of the labels, but the label range is A2 down to 337. Okay. So now it looks a little bit better. These are picky things that I wouldn't take off for, but this legend on the right-hand side, I really don't like the legend on the right-hand side, just because it kind of squishes my graph, if that's a stats word. So I would go to plus, I would go to legend, and then the option for legend, I would probably put this one on top. That's what you did? Yeah, we think alike. Great. We're very artistic together. This, showing imports and exports. Someone was asking me, they didn't understand what I was doing with the year label. Looks like 89, 90, 91, 92. That one looks okay. It looks like it's going every year. What we were doing there is, I was right-clicking on this, going to Format Axis, and under Labels, it's throwing down a label whenever it thinks is appropriate. If I want to label every 12 data points, I could put a 12 here. If I wanted it every 2 years, I could put a 24 here. That's what I want right now. I want every 2 years. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. And I wouldn't take off for this either, but I should label the y-axis. I don't know, this is probably in, what does it say? It's in millions. So I probably should say in millions. And the other thing I don't really like, is if I right-click on this, I don't like that 0.0. I can say Format Axis, and let's see, where is it? Under number, it has decimal places 1. I can change that to 0 if I want, so I get rid of that decimal place. And that's, like I said, that's not anything I'm going to take off for. But a lot of times, when there's something, this, like I say, it's part science, part art. If it doesn't look nice, it's something you say, like, I think this could be better. Excel's very intuitive. If you click on it, right-click on it, go to Format Axis, look around. There's usually something you can find, like, here's an option I can change to make this look the way I want it to look, make it look better, right? Because we're trying to create something that we're proud of, okay? So that is a line chart. Any questions on that? Were you guys all able to do it or think you can do it? You're going to do something for homework, obviously, but we have 80% of the skill set that you can refine tonight or this weekend. Yes? Yes, sir. Good. All right, so the next graph we are going to learn today is something called a scatter plot or scatter diagram. And this is really important in the business world as well. A lot of times we have instances where we just want to say, is this related to this, right? Is this interval variable related to this? For example, the example I always use is, let's say Miko runs an ice cream stand, okay? And I think that the temperature outside is related to how much ice cream I sell. That's a crazy hypothesis I have, right? But I want to see what that relationship looks like. So over the last 100 days, I tracked 2 things, both interval variables. I tracked the temperature, the high temperature outside, and my sales. So I think temperature determines sales. All right? When we have this kind of relationship, we call the thing that is independent, like temperature, the independent variable. This is something you should write down. This is the independent variable, meaning it just is, right? The independent variable, the thing that we think determines the other thing, is the independent variable. Okay? The thing that it determines, that we think it determines anyways, we call the dependent variable. So if I think about like electricity usage and number of household occupants, which one is independent, which one's dependent? Number of household occupants and electricity usage. What do you think? Well, the more people live in your house, the more electricity you're going to use, right? So number of occupants would be independent, electricity usage would be dependent. Does that make sense? So what we always do is we put the independent variable on the x-axis and the dependent variable on the y-axis. And let's say, going back to the summer of 2017, here's what I tracked: temperature and my ice cream sales. One day it was 70 degrees and I sold $500. Next day it was 85 and I sold $900. Then it was 65 and I sold $400. And then maybe it was 95 degrees and I sold $1,200 worth of ice cream. So every pair of points becomes a point. Every pair of data becomes a point. So temperature is 70 degrees. This is temperature. So let's see, 50, 60, 70. 70 degrees, let's say this is 500, this is 1,000. 70 degrees, I sold $500 worth of ice cream. Make sense? Next day, 85 degrees, and I sold $900 worth of ice cream. Next day, it was 65 degrees, and I sold $400 worth of ice cream. Then 95 degrees, and I sold $1,200 worth of ice cream. So over the course of 100 days, every day represents a point, and I get something maybe that looks like this. Okay? So what? Why would I do that? Why would I do that in the business world? Well, first off, can you see a relationship there? Does anyone see a relationship there? Daniel, what's the relationship? Which is what we thought going into this, Daniel. Yeah, we think that the higher it gets, the hotter it gets, the more ice cream we sell. And we call that type of relationship, we call that a positive relationship. And because it kind of looks almost like a line, it's not a perfect line, we call it a positive linear relationship. If it went down like that, but there's clearly a relationship, we would call that a negative linear relationship, right? A negative linear relationship. Like if this was temperature and, I don't know, hot coffee sales at a Penn State game. That's probably a negative linear relationship. There's a relationship that the hotter it is, the less hot chocolate we sell, and the colder it is, the more hot chocolate we sell, right? So that'd be a negative linear relationship. And there's some cases where we graph two things and we can't really visualize any type of relationship. I don't know, my mood in a given day and JR's mood. Probably no relationship at all. JR have no relationship, right? So his mood, my mood don't intersect. Like his mood doesn't affect my mood doesn't affect his mood. Yes? My wife's mood would affect my mood, right? So there might be some relationship. There's probably, I don't know, there's a relationship there, I can tell you. Okay, so when we do a scatter plot, what we're trying to see is there a relationship between those two variables? And further, what is that relationship? Because that's useful to us in the business world. We can say, hey, there's a relationship that can allow me to do other things. So if this were the case, and I ran an ice cream stand, how could I use this information? How could I use this information? It makes sense. You probably do this natively, but how could I use this information? How could I use this information?
Well, you see where it's like, what you want to do, yes, instead of that, and then you have that.
Okay, so you think about it, they can predict the weather pretty damn well, 5-10 days out. So if I know, hey, it's going to be a heat wave, and my sales are like, in the thousands, as a business owner, what can I do? What can I do? I can plan to make sure that we have enough inventory, make sure I have the appropriate levels of staffing. Hell, if it's going to be cold, maybe I say, well, no need for you guys to come in. It's going to be cold, right? So I can use that data to plan, to forecast all those good things. Does that make sense? And in the business world, that happens all the time. If we can develop trends and we know one variable, we can predict another variable. Awesome, right? That's awesome for us. That's where we get information. That's where we get knowledge. That's where we get power. So here's an example the book uses, and I like this example. So anyone who's ever sold a house or bought a house, when you go to the real estate agent, they price your house. Okay? They price your house. They say, I think this house is worth X $100,000. How do they do that? How do they do that? That's good. What'd you say? Very good. One thing they do, they have what they call comparables, right? So the first thing they do when they appraise your house is they look at, hey, these 10 houses sold in your area, right? These 10 houses sold in your area over the last 2 years. And here's the price of those 10 houses, right? Because typically those things work together, right? If you're in this neighborhood, the house is kind of same. But they also want to look at square footage. So here is a table of 12 homes that sold recently in a neighborhood. And here's their size in square feet and their price in thousands. Let's take a look at that data. Let's graph it. Let's make sense of it. So which one is the independent variable? Which one's the dependent variable? That's the first question. That's the most important question here. Which one do we think determines the other thing? Which one do we think determines the other? Mark? Yeah, we think size determines price. We think there's going to be a positive relationship, that size helps determine price. So size is independent, price is dependent. Size is going to go on the x-axis, price is going to go on the y-axis. Yes? Yes. Okay. So let's take a look at that data. That data is in XM02-05. So let's go get that data. So XM02-05. Wrong one. Yeah, it's XM, John, not XR. So XM02-05. And I'm going to up convert it. Okay. All right, we want the data to be in X, Y format, okay, where the thing leftmost is X, thing rightmost is Y. And that's what we have here. You know, size is our X-axis, price is our Y-axis. We have it in that format. If it came reversed, we could have simply done this. We could have taken column A, copied it, and copied it to column C, and now we have it in that order. So if you were presented with data in YX order, that's all you'd have to do to fix it. Does that make sense? Because the world doesn't give you everything you want exactly the way you want. So all we're going to do with this is highlight the data. So A1 the whole way down to B13. And I'm going to say insert. There's a scatter plot. And I'm going to insert a scatter plot. And I'm going to specify there. So visually looking at this, Malik, what would you say? What would you say about the relationship between square footage and price? Go ahead. Too high? No, I want you to interpret the data, not tell me what's wrong with the graph. There's a lot of things wrong with the data. If you read this as what? Leo, what do you read this as? As it goes this way, the bigger the house, what? But it's not perfect, right? It's not a perfectly straight line. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's like two houses that are roughly the same size, and one sells for this and one sells for that. Because size isn't the only determinant. Does that make sense? Like, this one maybe has, granite countertops, and, this one, so it's worth more. This one has oak floors or whatever it might be, and maybe the Mikos live next door, so it's not worth as much, right? So there are things other than square footage that can affect price. But this gives us a feel for that, right? It gives us a feel for the direction. And if I was a real estate agent and I was selling, I don't know, a 2,700 square foot home, I would probably look right about here to price it, and then maybe adjust up and down based on other factors, based on my expertise, yes? Now the graph itself, what's wrong with the graph itself? What's wrong with the graph itself? All right, very good. That's obviously a no-no for us. So I'm going to pick that first quick layout. I would say down here, this is size. and its size in square feet. This is price, and this is price in thousands of US dollars. Okay, and this relationship is, I'd probably call this the relationship, no, I would say house size versus price, something like that, okay? And I don't need the legend, so I'm going to get rid of it. So that looks good. That's a good graph, and I would say there's a positive linear relationship between size and price in thousands. I'm kind of going to do this more in chapter 3, but how else could I use this? So I'm an appraiser, and I want to use this information. You guys ever heard of the term regression analysis? What's regression? Some of you finance majors, maybe? No? None? Nothing? Stefan, no? You got something. I can tell. I can see it. It's gone. Okay. All right. Let's do this. And we're really going to do this more, and we're going to interpret this more in chapter 3. But take any of these points that we just graphed, right-click on a point, go down to Add Trend Line. Let's just do that for now. And as we add that trend line, click the box. It says Format Trend Line. Say Display Equation on Chart. You guys get that?
How do you do that again?
Right-click on any point. Go down to Add Trend Line. It'll have options there. In the bottom it says, there's a checkbox that says Display Equation on Chart. You guys all have that? Okay. That is the line, it's called a regression line. It's the best fit line for those points, the line of best fit. You know what I'm saying? Like if I could draw one line in there that best fit those points, that'd be that line. Okay? Why is that line useful to me? What is X and what is Y in my example? This is our last thing, so the faster you guys help me, the faster we get out of here. Maurice, right? Jordan. Maurice, that's your Maurice. Okay, Y is dependent and X is independent, right? Okay, so why is that line useful to me? Show me which way it's going. It's going up. All right. Great. Rachel? Okay. So let's say I'm trying to sell a 2,700 square foot home. Okay? And I want to know a starting price. And I'll adjust it up and down based on factors like, yard size and granite countertops, Miko's living next door, those kind of things, right? But how can I use that line? Well, X is square footage and Y is price. So I have an equation now that does what? It converts square footage to price. If I plug in 2,700 square feet, multiply it by 0.07, add 103, it's going to give me a price, right? So think about that. Now, I'm forecasting things. Like my ice cream deal, I can say, hey, it's going to be 99 next week. I can forecast pretty precisely what my sales will be, yes? Because if there's something I know, if I know the independent variable, and I know there's a relationship to this thing called the dependent variable, that line, although it's not perfect, right? We know it's not perfect. That line is a translator. It goes from square footage to price. Because if I'm an appraiser, I have expertise and my opinion matters, but everyone wants it to be based on facts. That's facts, right? That's a starting point. That's facts. Your boss, whoever he is or she is, they're going to hire you because of your intelligence and your expertise. But a lot of times, they're not going to want your opinion. They're going to want to know what the data says. What are the facts out there? And that's what statistics allow us to do, to uncover those facts. So it's not you BSing your way through it, right? It's you saying, this is what the data is showing. Make sense? All right, you guys are getting better at graphing, you feel? Mark, that was wishy-washy facial expressions. Okay, what I'd like you to do for homework then, for Tuesday, is 3 things. One is under chapter 2, well, it's all under chapter 2. So here's the 3 things I want you to do. The first one is under chapter 2, it says STAT301 student information form. This is a little survey that I created that I want you to fill out. Okay? And it's weird questions that I don't care about, so I'm not like trying to be invasive in your life. But we're going to generate data that you guys are going to analyze, and it's going to be based on you, right? So I'm going to ask you for your gender, your height, stuff like that. We're just getting data, right? You guys are going to serve as a source of data for us to analyze later, right? So I'm not talking about some example, we're talking about us, okay? So fill that out. The other things I'd like you to do is in the line chart area, let's see, we already did 20. Let's have you do 10, 11, do 8, 10, and 11. And there's things in there it says about doing a CPI adjustment, which is like an inflation adjustment. Don't worry about that, okay? Just do 8, 10, and 11. Okay, 8, 10, and 11. And in the scatter diagram area, which shouldn't take you long at all to do, I would like you to do that's the 2, 5. I'd like you to do 12, 13. And do all 4 of them. They won't take you long. 23 and 24. Okay. If you're still struggling with this, watch the videos. Come see me. Ask the classmate. These are great skills that I'm teaching you. At least that's how I feel. So try to get them under your belt, right? This is good stuff. Good luck to all the sports teams competing. I think what soccer, women's soccer is competing. Friday and Saturday. Boys are headed to Montana. Wow. Good luck in Montana. I've never been to Montana. I'd like to go to Montana. People are happy in Montana. I don't know why. My shirt was comfy.
They gonna make me pay, I don't know. Listen, man, first question I'm asking. Hey. Not? You need bigger pants.
Because it's when you put the rate in there, you put the rate like in comparison like 100%. So when you do the average, after you do the average, you have to subtract the 1 and put it back into factors of like 8% or 92, because you're basing it all off of nothing happening, which is 100%, 1. Like multiplied by a factor of 1. So when you put the rates in, it's all in the formula. You're going to see it's like if it's 5%, you're going to put in 1.05. If it's negative 5%, you're going to put in 1 minus 0.05, which is 0.95. So you're averaging based off of a 1 as the bar. So you have to subtract from 1 to get that 4%.
Okay.
You'll see in the formula.
All right. I mean, I already did like the formula in her class, so
Yeah.
I was kind of like ready to go with that.
Yeah, that's all it is. Well, you're adjusting it back into terms of like a percentage that we would talk about. If you have an 8% gain, it's really your money was like multiplied by 1.08.
Okay.
But we say 8%,
Right.
but really your money, the factor you went up was 1.08, right? So that's just adjusting it back to the terms that we